Today's episode is sponsored by the Christian Standard Bible. The goal of the CSB is to be faithful to the original languages without sacrificing clarity, all the while maintaining both accuracy and readability. With beautiful designs and multiple study Bible options, everyone, from adults to teens to children, can find a CSB Bible that they enjoy. Learn more at csbible.com.
Welcome to Real Talk Christian Podcast, where we drink coffee and have real conversations on faith, culture, and society. This is Mark Hyde.
And Chris Fuller.
And on today's episode of Real Talk Christian, we're sitting down with Rodney Buse of the podcast What's in the Bible, talking about false teachers in the church. How can we spot them? What does the Bible say? And what should we do if we run across one? Fuller, you ready to get edumacated?
Let's go.
Let's go. Fuller!
What's up, Mark?
Dude, it's been a fun setup day today.
We got a new computer.
We got a new computer.
It's a little bit...
Which means hopefully YouTube, I don't know if it still looks better or sounds better, but at least it works better on our end.
Right, yeah.
Usually,
it looks good to us.
If you're a computer guy, normally we run our stuff at not even 1080. We run at 720.
Yeah.
And we have like 24 frames per second.
Right, real
and we
slow.
max out like
Right.
at like 80% CPU.
Yeah.
Well, today...
We're at 15%.
We're at 15% with 30 frames per second,
Right.
kicking at full HDMI, baby.
Yeah,
We
buddy.
be rolling.
Yeah,
But
buddy.
let's be honest. Most people listen to audio and they're like, you know what? We don't care about video. We just want to hear your beautiful voices to serenade us as we drive to work in the morning. That's what they want.
What planet are you living on?
Apparently, my own planet is what it is. But, dude, how are you doing,
I'm doing
friend?
good, my friend. How about yourself? I'm excited about tonight's
I'm
episode.
excited. We got to keep the banter down because we got to make sure we give Roddy as much time as we can.
Exactly. So we probably should just jump into our Would You Rather questionnaire real
do
fast.
that, and then we'll talk about the interesting coffee we're drinking tonight.
Oh, okay.
All right, what do we got for the
All
questionnaire?
right, so here we go. We're going to do 2 Would You Rathers, all right?
Okay.
All right, so would you rather have a headache or have a sore throat?
I don't know. Will my headache go away if I drink more caffeine?
I don't know. It just says that's not the...
I would
It's not
go with a
option.
headache and then just rock the ibuprofen.
All right, I'm going to go with the sore throat. 'Cause
Really?
You take a lozenger and like numb your throat. and
That's
then
true,
you
but I feel like I talk all day for work.
Yeah,
so
do I,
it's
but that's
like,
all right. So you're saying headache, I'm
I'd
saying
say
sore
headache.
throat. So 49% say headache, 51% say sore throat.
oh, don't worry, Rodney. We're gonna ask you these questions when we get you on the show here in a second. Don't worry.
All right, so would you rather be hysterically funny or be absolutely beautiful?
You mean what am I already? I'm obviously not the funny one in our
Hey,
relationship.
we're talking about false teachers, not...
Well, sheesh.
So what would you rather be?
I would rather be beautiful.
I'd rather be funny, so...
But see,
42% funny, 58% beautiful.
I'm going to be very careful with the next words I say.
Hey, Proverbs says beauty fades, right?
That's true. But so in our relationship, right? Normally, like I'm like not in our relationship, but mine and Beth's relationship. I'm a goober. I'm goofy. Like I'm just a dork. Like that's just who I am, right?
Not
Like
you.
I'm just my jokes are dad jokes and like little like that's how I roll. I'm very good on the spot on a microphone for that. Beth is just funny. She is just funny. And so when we first started getting together, she goes, you know, all your college kids and teenagers are going to love me because I'm funnier than you, right? And I'm like, okay. And it's true.
Right.
It's true.
So
either way.
Why don't we talk about the coffee we're drinking tonight?
Dude, you talk about it because you brought I came prepared to do some AeroPress, some espresso.
So Janelle goes, I want to see you guys. See, this is a coffee sponsored by Janelle Fuller.
There you go.
She said, I want to see you guys drink the Coca-Cola with coffees. And I'm like, that sounds disgusting.
We're opening them
and
right
so
now.
you did the you got the caramel, and I've got
I didn't shake it because I was scared if I would shake it.
I've got the me too. So I've got the vanilla.
Oh, that's different. Oh,
What
do they do? Put a bunch of fake caramel in this? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't.
I would say I would never buy it again.
I like something else in my Coke, but not this. Don't like coffee in my Coke. That's for sure. I'm Reformed Baptist, so I can say that.
You
right?
want to try that one, and I'll try yours.
I'll try that one.
All right,
I'll try that one. Oh yeah, you can keep that one. You can keep that one. I don't want that one. I want this
They're
one.
both disgusting.
They're both disgusting. But this would be a decent hit if you knew what you were expecting. But for us who just drink coffee, it's like
it's too much ickies.
I don't like coffee with my Coke. I'm gonna let the people interpret what I'm saying. I don't like the coffee with my Coke.
Coffee and a kind of Coke.
So either way, man, I feel like we've been letting the poor man sit there for too long.
I think we should bring him in. And while you bring him in, I'm going to look.
I'm bringing him in.
Did we look to see if we had any reviews?
I did not look. Okay, Rodney, have you had this crap before? This Coca-Cola coffee?
No, I have not.
Thank goodness you haven't, because it's
There's just
bad.
something that when you guys were describing that and just seeing the expressions on your face just made me say no.
I feel like you need to go to like Walgreens and get one though at some point, Rodney. Just
it's like upsetting
do
my
it on your
stomach. It's that
podcast.
bad.
You got to do it on your podcast. With the one you do with your pastor, you got to make him drink it. You don't drink it, make him drink it.
Yeah, because I'm not at the table for that one.
Right, you're behind
go.
the camera.
So-
There you go.
Oh,
Right, so
goodness.
they can drink it.
So before we let you introduce yourself, Rodney, we're going to ask you the same questions that we just answered here. So,
would you rather have a headache or a sore throat?
Oh, definitely a headache.
A headache?
I can't deal with a sore throat. I can't deal with it. Nope.
All right.
especially as a podcaster, you got to have
yeah.
good throat.
Oh, see, I can't think properly when I have a headache. Like, I just can't formulate thoughts anymore.
I have so many
debilitates me.
kids. It is what it is.
Yeah, your whole
It
life's a
just it
headache.
is what it is. We had so out of all 7 kids today, we only had one in the house
you said-
today.
you
We
said-
had one. We had little Mia. She's one of our 3 2-year-olds. She's gonna turn 3 at here literally like a week, and the house was quiet. Me and her went for a walk with my coffee in the wagon this morning around like, I don't know, 8 o'clock, whatever. It was still kind of like the dew on the ground. She helped me water the flowers, did some stuff, and then I worked, and she just watched Paw Patrol and beat bopped around my office, and I'm like, holy crap, I forgot how nice this was.
Right. Well, we got another
But-
would you rather.
Oh, another would you rather. I took it
Yeah,
over. I took it over.
So, would you rather be hysterically funny or absolutely beautiful?
Well, I'm already one.
Already one. Should we ask
should
your
we
wife
assume?
which one?
So I'm already really funny. That's what.
Wait, was that a joke?
No, I think I would rather be funny
Yeah.
than absolutely beautiful, because I think what you said earlier makes a total amount of sense, and it is in the Bible.
See?
What's in the Bible?
But what does the Bible say? Right?
Yeah, not
Right.
what's in, because what's in the Bible is dude from VeggieTales.
Oh,
Come on.
Phil
Phil
Vischer.
Vischer, yeah.
I was
The
going to say
Holy Post
Bob.
podcast. You know he has a podcast, right? Holy
Yes.
Post podcast.
Yep, I do.
And
Yep.
Bob and Larry.
He plays Bob.
Did you see?
nice.
Actually,
By the
Rodney,
way-
I think you saw the post I posted on Instagram today,
Yes,
where it was
I
like
did.
Bob and Larry, and it was a bottle of ketchup, and it was
Yes,
a bottle
I
of
saw it.
relish.
Yeah, it was pretty funny.
That was good.
My,
that was
my
good.
wife enjoyed that one too.
Friday funnies.
I also like the VBS,
VBS reality. VBS on a budget.
right, yeah.
It's
pretty
all fun. But anyway, let's jump in, dude. So
Let's do it.
Rodney,
All right.
tell us a little about yourself, what podcasts you do, the ministries you're involved with.
Okay.
Just who is Rodney Buse?
We're just going to sit back and let
Who
you
is?
talk now.
who is now? I mean, people know your name if they've listened for a while because you sent us coffee.
Yeah, we've mentioned you a few times.
Yep.
So,
Right.
But no,
Yeah,
go
and you
for
guys
it, man.
enjoyed that coffee, right?
Oh,
it's-
I tried to order more, but the shipping costs the same as the coffee, so I didn't want to pay
it's
for it.
delicious.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
delicious.
I need to talk to them about their shipping costs. It's ridiculous.
I mean, it's in a mason jar. If they just sent it in a Ziploc baggie, I'd be cool with that. $4 shipping.
Oh, no, that's classy when you send it to the mason
It
jar,
is
though.
classy.
And it keeps it
Yes.
fresh,
But
too.
again, I'm not paying the same amount for the shipping as I am the coffee.
I
but
would.
anywho.
I would.
No, go
I
for it,
agree with you
Rodney.
100%.
All right, go ahead.
I mean,
Rod.
for me, I can just drive down the road and get it.
Right,
so
there
it's,
you go.
We don't do that. I keep drinking this, but this is not growing on me. This Coke with coffee, it's
Yeah.
not growing on me.
That's
but
got to be disgusting.
but it's a nervous tick that I do. All right, go for it, man.
All right. So I spent 20 years in the Navy on submarines, and I came to Christ at age 28. I think in one of my episodes I said 26, but I'm really bad at math. so, so I was 28 when I came to Christ, which was about halfway through my career in the Navy. And after coming to Christ, and actually it's interesting because I think I was tossed into this a little bit too early in my walk with Christ. I became a Protestant lay leader on a submarine because we don't have chaplains on submarines. It's too small of a crew. It's the same way on surface ships that are really small too, where they'll have a.
I never heard of that. Have you heard of that?
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I did that for my last 3 commands in the Navy as a Protestant lay leader. That was a really big time growing experience for me because it really caused me to read into a lot of things that most people don't in their walk with Christ. So, for example, just to give you an example, we had the chaplain came down and did an underway with us for like 3 days, and he forgot his ebook. So I let him borrow mine. And when he got done with it, he's like, I have never seen a sailor who has the Confessions of Augustine on his ebook. I've never seen I've never seen a sailor who has Tertullian on his ebook. You know,
Holy cow.
Yeah, so he was like, this is ridiculous. What, I said, hey, I got to study something.
Right.
You know what I mean? I got to learn something.
Yeah, most people are over here like having Furtick books or, hey, even Piper, but you're like, no, I want the Confessions of Augustine.
Yeah.
It is a good book, though.
It is good.
Right. Yeah, I mean, how many new Christians do you know that are actually reading the Westminster Confessions? You know what I'm saying? So
it should be more, in all honesty.
It should be. Or the creeds.
Sure.
Learning about. We just had an episode dropped on the creeds. So
and that was a great episode, and we're going to bring that up later because there was something funny in that.
Did I pick my nose again?
I'm worried about something we said that he's like,
no.
What about that Satanic moment?
It may be. All right, so I did that. I rode when I retired from the Navy. I got a little bit lost because when you lose that brotherhood that you've been kind of ingrained into for 20 years, it's an immediate loss, and you kind of go through almost like a depression in a way, and some anxiety with social anxiety. I mean, how do I deal with civilian life? And so I met up with some guys and started riding motorcycles with a group called Bikers for Christ here in Virginia Beach. And that really kind of helped bring me back and help me get through that period. And on top of that, it also taught me about reaching people for Christ in the most extreme environments. When you go into a clubhouse for the Hells Angels, or you go into a clubhouse,
we actually have one right here by where I live.
I actually sold my motorcycle to Hells Angels.
Did you really?
Yeah, and had a good conversation with them.
Yeah.
Wow, but still.
So when you get into those environments and you start talking to those guys, you find out they are still people, but you also got to remember what they're capable of at the same time.
Right.
And so it was interesting reaching those guys for Christ and seeing guys who were in that environment come to Christ. Excuse me. It really helped me grow in my ability to talk about Christ with anybody, because even down on a submarine, you know all those guys and they're like your family, so it's not as hard to approach people about Christ when you know them really well. But when you don't know this guy and you're talking to a guy whom is involved with who knows what, I don't want to speculate, but who knows what,
right?
It's a whole different ball game, because you could very easily in that situation end up with a size 15 boot in your chest. So,
or a bullet in your head, depending. Depending. That's what they're known for. So,
yeah. So it was a really big time growing experience. After that, we ended up going through a couple bad church experiences. Not that we had any loss of faith on our side whatsoever. It was just that we ended up with, and this kind of gets into where we ended up with the. With what we're looking for or what we're doing with, but what does the Bible say? We had 2 situations where we ended up in churches that I didn't know until I got behind the curtain in church leadership, that they were involved with some churches that were prosperity gospel, that they were into word of faith movement and stuff like that. And because of that, it was kind of eye-opening to, oh my goodness, these guys are teaching things that are non-scriptural.
Right.
And so we're going to get into a little bit of that a little bit later. But that was kind of a growing experience for me too. Everything God prepares you along the way in your walk with Christ in everything you do. And so it came to where I ended up at Water's Edge Church with my wife, Pastor Steve Roby. He's a Reformed theologian type. So now, interestingly enough, I was baptized in a Wesleyan church.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
So
that's an experience.
And so going to your church, they didn't make you get rebaptized because one faith, one baptism, right?
Right. Right. Yeah, because Water's Edge Church was originally a part of Church of God in Anderson, Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, yep, we know them real well.
Yeah, you should.
We know them real well.
Mm-hmm.
Not in a bad way.
Yep.
Just it is what it is.
Yeah.
Bill Gaither.
Yep. That's true. But the thing is we ended up there, which I think has been like the most growth that me and my wife have both had in our walk with Christ was getting involved there, going through the elder process there. Well, like I said, was a year long. We use the 9 marks principles for church leadership. So they don't take it lightly. It's becoming an elder isn't like just a political, hey, I'm going to run for office kind of thing. It is a long process, and they want to make sure that you gel well with the guys, that you do meet the 1 Timothy and Titus, requirements for church leadership, which is really important. And you also have to be a teacher. You have to be able to teach. So that's where we ended up. We ended up doing Coffee Time Q&A at the Water's Edge with Steve Roby as the host for that. And I had the equipment, so I'm like, hey, I can do this too. So I started doing, but what does the Bible say?
It's awesome.
And
so for what does the Bible say? Is that now? This is me just curious. Is that sponsored by the church, or is that more of just another ministry of the church?
Okay, so I originally started on my YouTube channel that's under my name, and when I first started off, I mean, I came out of the gate with some really, really rough edge stuff. And the pastor was like, and of course, right, I'm still submit to the authority of the elders of the church, right?
Yep.
I mean, that's important that you do that. And the pastor looked at me and said, hey, let's talk about tone real quick. Because after 20 years of being on submarines, I mean, sarcasm and stuff like that was like a natural language to me.
So you basically were like a Todd Friel.
Times 10.
Yeah, because Todd Friel kind of has that feel to him. So,
oh goodness,
yes. But yeah, I was pretty sarcastic and pretty down and dirty about some stuff, and he was like, maybe you need to pull back a little bit. So I started up the new channel because I wanted to completely relaunch separate from what I was doing originally. I mean, I only had like 24 followers on YouTube at the time, so it wasn't that.
Hey, still better than us. I mean, we barely got nothing on YouTube.
Yeah, but your podcast is doing really, really well.
Yeah, we're doing okay. We're doing okay.
But yeah, so I started up, but what does the Bible say on a new channel? And I also had started the podcast at the same time. Actually, I started the podcast first. If you'll notice, if you look at my YouTube channel and you look at my podcast, there's a few that are out of order. And I have less videos than I have podcast episodes. So
yeah, we all got. I mean, that's what we did. We started with just audio, and then a year later we added video, and, and here we are, year 3 with a sponsor and a better computer. We need a better camera, but we're getting there. So with your show, what does the Bible say? I know you have the co-host. He looks like he's our age. Like he looks like a younger guy, right?
Yes, he is. And actually, he's from Southern Indiana, also. By the way.
Okay.
Good for now. Is he just like a deacon in the church, or like a?
He is the deacon of no, this is horrible. He's actually the Deacon of Hospitality.
Okay.
So he really takes, comes over with, making sure that people are welcome to the church. He's over the cleanup team because we still have here in Virginia have some of the COVID-19 restrictions on stuff. So they like in between both services, they go through and they clean all the folding chairs and make sure that they're all clean and stuff like that. So, but he is in training right now to become an elder.
We've had a lot of conversations about you were talking about junior elders.
Yeah.
And how we should be raising elders in the church.
Right. Yeah.
Like an elder in training.
Right. That's under the eldership, but it has no real authority, but
they're preparing.
Goes to the same meetings, is involved just like the elders are, as that kind of Paul to Titus or Paul to Timothy type of relationship. So.
No, that's just cool.
We have this, and this is one of the things that I found interesting, even with the church that we go to now, is that a lot of churches want to raise up to send out, but very few of them raise up to stay.
Right.
And that's one of the things that I think most churches really need to start thinking about is, we always, because I know different denominations have different methods of which they bring in new pastors and so on. But what's wrong with raising up a pastor from within your own congregation?
Right.
I mean, and training them up to be that position. So,
I mean, we see that in the early church fathers. That's how it was.
That's exactly how it was.
yeah. So it's a biblical principle. Why not use it?
I like it. I like it. Man, this Coca-Cola coffee is giving me both like coffee breath and coffee burps and Coke burps. I don't know what to do with this right now. Just for you guys who are curious about our check-in on this Coke stuff, it tastes better, but I got the burps now. But either way, so to get into tonight's conversation, the reason why I'm like, this might be a fun conversation is you actually did a 2-part series on your own podcast. What does the Bible say? We've been talking about of just false teachers. What are they? How do we spot them? And that's a topic that I feel like in today's church, it's not really cared about. I know there's a lot of people on who listen to our podcast who are either young in the faith. They've honestly just come back to the faith, that they walked away for a little bit. They're trying to grow in their faith. And when they start interacting with those on the outside, not in the outside as an unbelievers, but more like, there's so many pastors all over TV and YouTube, and there's books, and just because it's in the Christian bookstore doesn't necessarily mean it's a good scriptural Bible teacher.
Right.
And something that we're all about is we want to be able to train and equip our people who are listening, both with church history, but also here's how to live, but also just how to think.
Right.
So I figured that, with this conversation of, what does the Bible say about false teachers? We couldn't bring anyone else better on this show than you to talk about it.
Definitely.
So I figured that would be a fun way to go into it. So before we even get into that conversation, though, I do want to ask one really quick question before we dive in, because you've been an active listener of RTC for a while. So I'm curious, do you have a favorite episode of us? Because we're wonderful to listen to.
I have I have 2.
Oh,
actually.
Okay.
And it's interesting because it's the 2 that I first listened to, when I first found you guys. And I think it was the first one. One of them was one that I think it was the first one that I actually commented on YouTube, and that was the witchcraft and wizardry.
Oh yeah.
And then also, does God choose us, or do we choose God? That was the other one, the second one that I listened to. So
that's really cool, actually.
Yeah. Those are kind of both on different ends of the spectrum there. I like it.
Theology and Harry Potter.
Yeah.
That's really fun. Anywho, so let me ask you the question, Rodney. So what does the Bible say about false teachers?
Okay, so it actually says a lot more than people think. We hear the terminology or the phrase, let the Bible, or shout where the Bible shouts, whisper where the Bible whispers, right? We've heard that a few times, even here lately. However, a lot of people don't realize that the Bible does kind of shout about this topic, that there is a lot of bewares, right, in the Bible about false teachers. And we're going to start off with Matthew 7:15 through 20, which states, "Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. You will recognize them by their fruits. Are grapes gathered from thorn bushes, or figs from thistles? So every healthy tree bears good fruit, but the diseased trees bears bad fruit. A healthy tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor can a diseased tree bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Thus you will recognize them by their fruits." Now we can return to this one later, because there's more to that, or more that we can talk about on that one. The next one I have there is Revelation 2 through 7, and this is a letter to the church in Ephesus. I may not read this whole thing, but now I will.
Go for it. We read some long passages here.
Hey, if you guys want to jump in and read, I'm good with it. Right?
Oh, that's all you, man. You are the guest of honor. We get to sit back and enjoy.
This is the easy podcast for us.
Don't worry, right, you can use it on your show too.
Oh yeah, you remember this. I'll return the favor.
You're welcome.
Anytime.
I'm not drinking that Coke. That's it.
Make your pastor do it. You don't do it.
That's right.
Revelations.
All right, so we are in the book of Revelation, and this is Revelation 2 through 7. This is a letter to the church in Ephesus. "I know your works, your toil, and your patient endurance, and how you cannot bear with those who are evil, but have tested those who call themselves apostles, and are not, and found them to be false. I know you are enduring patiently and bearing up for my name's sake, and you have not grown weary. But I have this against you, that you have abandoned the love you had at first. Remember, therefore, from where you have fallen. Repent and do the work you did at first. If not, I will come to you and remove your lampstand from its place. Unless you repent. Yet this you have. You hate the works of the Nicolaitans, which I also hate. Now, actually, I am going to stop there at verse 6 because we need to talk about like who were the Nicolaitans, right?
Yep.
And right. So one of the theories on the Nicolaitans is that the Nicolaitans were kind of a bounce back from the circumcision group, right? That there was this real big time legalistic group trying to teach people that they needed to become Jewish to become Christian, right? And so some people think the Nicolaitans were a response to that, or an over response to that, to where they taught a false freedom, which means that they were extremely liberal, if you will.
Right.
Something that you can say that we're seeing today.
Like a progressive Christianity almost?
Right. Yes. Where they bounce back to almost where they were allowing things that, to live in sin, for example.
Right.
So that's kind of one of those theories that, and we can talk about that a little bit later too, about that whole bounce back principle. But both of them would be considered false teachings, right? Whether it be the legalism or what the Nicolaitans were doing, which was that bounce back to a false freedom of, hey, I can do whatever I want. I'm free to do whatever I want, no matter what.
Yep.
So that's kind of where we go with the Nicolaitans. Next, we have Acts 20:28 through 30. It says, pay careful attention to yourselves and to all of the flock. Now, when we think about that, this is more towards the church leaders. So he's saying, pay careful attention to yourselves and to all the flock, in which the Holy Spirit has made you overseers, to care for the church of God, which he obtained with his own blood. I know that after my departure, fierce wolves will come in among you, not sparing the flock. And from among your own selves will arise men speaking twisted things to draw away the disciples after them. So this is, like I said, this is to the leadership, right? And one of the things that it's saying here is to not to look after yourself, which is important, right? To make sure that what you are teaching is correct. And it also tells us to make sure that we are paying attention to the flock. What are the flock looking at, right? What are they being exposed to maybe outside of your own community of the church? And it says there will be people who rise up among you. So within that body and within that local body, especially in this case, that are teaching, or we're going to bring in things that are not true, that are false teachings. And so it's one of those things where we have to pay attention to that as church leaders. And I think actually it was John Piper that actually refers to this passage as well, and when he talked about this subject, where we have a responsibility as church leaders to make sure that we're pointing out false teachers, and we'll talk about that a little bit too, I'm sure.
Yeah, and let me ask you this, Rodney. So with you being an elder in the church, are you just a lay elder, or are you actually like on the paid pastoral staff?
I am a lay elder.
So for
I have
you,
a full-time job.
So you do have a full-time job. So for you as a lay elder, though, do you still hold the responsibility of protecting the church doctrine?
Yes.
Now
in our church, yes.
Now, is that a easy task to do? Is that a difficult task, like from your end as an elder?
It can be difficult because a lot of times you find a lot of the false teachings, like we said earlier about, like when you walk into a bookstore, right?
Right.
And you walk into a Christian bookstore, and you'll find a lot of books that are in there that have false teachings in them. Right.
Yeah.
And so you can guarantee that you have congregants, members of your church, that are going into those bookstores and buying those books and reading them and then quoting them in community groups. Right. So, that's part of watching out for that. And sometimes you have to pull the member of the church aside and have that conversation. So, yeah, and it is difficult.
I'm going to go down that rabbit trail a bit. Have you had to do that to somebody?
Yes. Yes, I have. And it's not fun.
No, it never is.
And it's something that you have to be, and we're going to talk about this a little bit too, more, but just even on this more specifically, you have to be very prayerful And you always have to remember to have respect.
Mm.
You know, when you're discussing this with a person, and make sure that you're not putting it on them, but putting it on the book that they're reading.
Right.
Is the best way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So
I like it. I like it. Yeah, thanks for that segue. Let's keep going though.
okay.
What else we got?
Okay, so we have 1 Timothy 1:3-11. As I urged you when I was going to Macedonia, remain in Ephesus so that you may charge certain persons not to teach any different doctrine, nor to devote themselves to myths and endless genealogies, which promote speculation rather than stewardship from God that is by faith. The aim of our charge is to love that issue, or wait a minute. The aim of our charge is love that issues from a pure heart and good conscience and a sincere faith. Certain persons, by swerving from these, have wandered away into vain discussion, desiring to be teachers of the law without understanding either what they are saying or the things about which they make confident assertions. And I'm just going to go ahead and stop there, because this really attains to, for example, you know how we're told in 1 Timothy and Titus about the leadership, the requirements for leadership for a church. If you bring somebody in that's too new, and like I said earlier, this was something that happened to me when I came to Christ and then became a lay elder. I can guarantee you that I came in way too early. And there's definitely a possibility that I may have been teaching some things that were not correct back then. So I really had to go back and step back then and look at the chaplain that was at the squadron and say, hey, can you please make sure I'm not messing up? You know what I mean? So you have to have that wisdom, even if you don't feel real confident in teaching something, then it's good to get that opinion, right? To make sure that people are looking at what you are teaching so that you're teaching something that is proper. So yeah, I think that this is really what's happening here. Sometimes you have young Christians, and I'm sure you guys have seen them too, that become very, very, yeah, I want to go be a pastor. And you're like, dude, you've been a Christian for 2 days.
Yep, calm down a little bit.
So yeah, it's important to make sure that the people that we're bringing up understand that it does take time.
Right.
I mean, even Paul was 3 years before he was, allowed to
3
really
years in
teach.
the desert.
Well, look at every disciple was 3 years with Christ before.
Right.
I mean, that's kind of seems to be the standard back then.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like the golden nugget of why people go to, seminary or even Bible college to get that training, because I don't think people know until you start to teach the weight that comes with that, Right. And I don't think I understood the weight until I was a full-fledged, youth pastor teaching 2, sometimes 3, 4 times a week, and that burden's heavy once you realize, oh, what I'm teaching can really stir it could steer someone away.
And as a teacher, taking full responsibility, knowing that, hey, I'm accountable to God for what I teach.
Right, because teachers are going to be judged more than anybody else for their teaching.
That is scary. That is scary.
It is. You got to stand. I mean, we all have to stand before God and give an account. But as a teacher, it's like even for just our podcasts, we're responsible to God for anything that comes out of our mouths.
Absolutely.
Oh goodness. I mean, hopefully I don't have to answer for why I drank this Coke coffee, but
you're hung up on that. Aren't
I am hung up on, because I am very. You know how long I've been waiting for this.
I'm trying to figure out if we can call that sinful or not. I don't know.
We should.
It doesn't taste
You notice
good.
how this has been sitting over here? Mine's been off to the side.
But you brought 20 beverages to drink, bro. I have one.
I was going to say, I see the bubbly there. So.
Yeah,
You got the bubbly.
It's a favorite. This is a new flavor.
I keep looking. I see Kool-Aid Jammers over there. I'm about ready to go take one.
Yeah.
But no, let's keep going in 1 Timothy though.
All right. So actually, I'm going to move down to 1 Timothy 6:3-10. Which says, if anyone teaches a different doctrine and does not agree with sound words of our Lord Jesus Christ and the teaching that accords with godliness, he is puffed up with conceit and understands nothing. He has an unhealthy craving for controversy and for quarrels about words which produce envy, dissension, slander, evil suspicion, and constant friction among people who are depraved in mind and depraved of the truth. Imagine that godliness is a means of gain. This is something that I look at and I go, man, so yeah, a means of gain. So they're using, godliness as a means of gain.
Right. It's almost
And
like a
so-
manipulation.
Right. And this is something that's interesting because a lot of people don't realize this, but there was a guy named Paul of Samosata. I don't know if you've ever heard of him or not.
I was just listening to a study on him on my way over here.
Were you really?
Yeah.
I know the name, but I'm trying to think of what he was or what he
Yeah.
did.
Wasn't he 5th century? 6th century?
No, I think he was third or fourth.
Was he
century.
3rd or 4th? Okay.
But he used the Christian faith for power and amassing wealth.
Yep.
Yeah, he was essentially a prosperity gospel preacher.
I was gonna say he was the Joel Osteen of the day.
Wow.
Yes. So that's even the Bible speaks out against this
Right.
about using the gospel for financial gain, for massive financial gain. Now this does not, and now understand, this goes beyond the whole muzzling the ox that's treading the grain, right?
Right.
We got to remember that is important, that our pastors do deserve a salary. They do deserve, double honor. But what this is talking about is exactly what we just said, the Paul of Samosata situation.
Right.
So, right.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
for we brought nothing into the world, and we cannot take anything out of the world. But if we have food and clothing, with these we will be content. So we're supposed to be content, right? We're supposed to be content as church leaders.
Right.
So if the church leader is not content and he's living for the world, is he really doing this for the right reasons?
Right.
Right.
Preachers and sneakers.
That's what I was thinking. So far from these verses, I'm kind of seeing 3 things rise to the surface when it comes to what does the Bible say about false teachers. Is one, I mean, obviously they just teach incorrect doctrine, flat out, whether it's prosperity gospel, word of faith movement, legalism, progressivism. Basically, if they're preaching anything contrary to the gospel, that counts. Another one is people who teach. This is what I want to ask you a question about, because it seemed like in that first passage, what was that, Matthew 7, where it was talking about the root fruit idea, where the fact of you'll know a false teacher by how they live. So I'm curious. We'll get back to this. I'm listening to a podcast right now called the Fall of Mars Hill. Christianity Today is putting it on. I was a big Mark Driscoll fan. I followed the man for years. He was very instrumental to my belief. So when it all went down, it shook me pretty hard. Yeah. And so they're talking about the fact of he preaches the Bible. He expounds on it. He's not incorrect in his teaching, but then his actions didn't match what he was supposed to be as a pastor. So I want to curious what your thoughts on someone like that is. And then someone who is basically in it for the wrong reasons would also count as a false teacher. Would you say that's a fair assessment, like kind of those 3 factors?
Yeah, it is. When we say we'll know them by their fruit, and I was going to talk about this a little later in the podcast, but
always jumping the gun.
I always do that.
No, it's okay. It's absolutely okay that we can jump into
Oh,
this
no,
now
he yells at me because I'll jump like 10 questions ahead in our personal show notes. He's like, I'm not there yet.
I'm like,
my
read
bad.
the show notes. I'm building.
My bad. My bad.
But no, this is a good segue for this passage is actually a good segue into that. And also, and like we said, Matthew, right? The thing is that a lot of people confuse when we say the fruit, right, of a ministry. A lot of people think that we're talking about numbers, and that's an inaccurate thing. We are not. Just because somebody has 1,000 people in their pews on Sunday morning does not mean that is the fruit, right? The fruit of the Spirit is what we have inside us, right? It's what we are putting out. It's also what we are passing on to the people, right? Because they're going to see how we live.
Right.
When we raise up people in the church, when we raise up youngsters to become disciples, right? They should also be learning how we live our lives. They should see that relationship with our wives. They should see that relationship with our kids. They should see that kind of stuff. And they should see that, hey, this is how I'm supposed to live also.
Right.
And if we're living not in accordance with Scripture in our outside the church, they're going to notice that. And what does that turn them into?
Right.
They think it's okay. And so it's going to show through the people that come up underneath them as well.
Well, and the Bible talks about us as teachers being above reproach. I mean, that's basically what you're saying, is being above reproach in all aspects of our life, not just on Sunday mornings.
Right.
So
yeah, and now the above reproach thing also is to have nothing that anybody can get their hooks into you.
Right.
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 So-
Yes.
Right.
Yes. I mean, that's very key.
And at the end of the day, I mean, we're all sinners. We all fall short, but that's a call for those who deem themselves as teachers. And, you know, I wonder if this adds a different element into today's world, because before, you know, teachers were people who had the microphones, who had the platforms, who,
Right.
you know, like there was one Spurgeon, there was one of, you know, John Owens, there was one of these different people. But nowadays, everybody got Instagram, and everybody's sharing their faith and their teaching and their opinion. So I'm curious.
But even back then, though, I mean, a man was still the teacher in
Teacher of his
house.
home, right.
He was still the teacher
That's
of those he worked with. I mean, it's always been kind of there that you've always had that influence, especially men, being that we are placed in the role of head of the household, and naturally are supposed to be more of that leadership role in our community. So,
Yeah.
I think that. Yeah,
so we
yes,
all have a role to play in teaching, but
though it may not be a public teaching role, we still do have a teaching role.
mm-hmm.
Now, I
Yes.
get we're kind of gearing this whole podcast more towards
mainly
false teachers
like,
out in the public forum, but
right, whether
Right.
pastors or big time communicators.
I want our listeners to also remember that we are still teachers at home, and we can still be false teachers to even our spouse and to our kids, and we have to watch
Right.
that. So I just want to throw that out
That's
there.
that's a challenge. Every time you lash out, and I lashed out in anger towards one of my kids, am I being a false teacher and a false representative
Well,
of Jesus?
you're still a saved person with sinful tendencies because of the
Well, it goes back
nature
to
of-
justification, sanctification that we've always
right,
talked
exactly.
about.
It's sanctification is a process, so you're not going to be perfect all the time.
Right.
It's what you do when you do those lash outs that you know are sinful. Do you just leave it that way, or do you go and say, "Hey, I was wrong"?
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Well, I mean,
that's
you
where
guys you guys talked about Saint Nicholas, jack slapping areas, right?
I still think that's the greatest church history story of all time.
It
No
is,
question.
it is.
Jolly Saint Nick, fat, happy guy, literally full-fledged. I hope he backhanded him, man. Just full-fledged, just straight arm.
But what did he do? What did he do directly after? Right? Didn't he pray?
Yep.
Yeah, he mourned over
for
his
forgiveness?
sin. Right.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's
So-
what it is. I mean, we're going to sin, but it's what do you do after that?
And how do you respond? And even, I was having a conversation with someone else about this too. And they said the biggest difference between someone who is, for lack of a better word, a sinner and someone who just they sin is the response of David. You know, like when Nathan came and told him the parable, and he said, "Oh, by the way, yeah, that the person who stole the sheep, that's you, boss." And what did David do? Like, homeboy tore his clothes and ashes and repented and begged for mercy, even though he did one of the most two of the most heinous acts that are known to man. And I'm not saying that was okay, and it's not okay, but at the same token, he instantly was like, "I messed up." And there's a level of humility with that, I think, too. But let me ask you this. Go ahead, Rodney.
You can look at the difference between how did Peter react to his own, when he disowned Jesus, right?
Oh, he went away and cried because he was ashamed.
In comparison to Judas.
Right.
So when you compare those two different actions afterwards, there's a difference there. So
I might be jumping the gun a little bit even more with this next question. I like to do that. But if there are pastors and teachers, and because a lot of our people, they're just people in the church. They're trying to figure out Jesus, or they love Jesus, and they're just servants. With teachers, and I mean, I've already said names, and I'm only saying it because it's a public platform. Mark Driscoll's, the Perry Nobles, the James McDonald's, these guys who were removed from their post because of the way they conducted themselves.
Right.
Would you deem them as false teachers and we should do away with their resources and with their stuff? Or is it one of those things where they taught the Bible well, so we can just take what they taught because all truth is God's truth? I mean, that's something I'm personally am wading through as well.
Well, I mean, what do you do with Ravi Zacharias?
Exactly.
Exactly. And the stuff that he taught, because he was theologically, correct 90% of the time, 98%, 99, 100% of the time, right? Whenever he was doing his apologetics.
And it goes back. It goes back to the saying of, I think, you eat a fish, you eat the meat, you spit out the bones, and you have to have some discernment, and that's where the eldership team teaching you should be stepping in and pointing out, yes, this is correct teaching, no, this is not correct teaching. And then amongst the elders, it should be each other.
I do have an opinion about that, though.
All right, let's
give it to us.
And this is opinion.
What does Rodney say?
Portion of this. I think that whenever you, like, for example, read a book from like Driscoll, right?
Mm-hmm.
If the teaching that's in the book from cover to cover is solid, right? Is it false teaching? So that's my question to you guys.
No.
Is that false teaching? No, it's not.
Yeah.
So there's everything in there would be solid teaching, but because he had great head knowledge doesn't mean he had a good heart. Right.
Yep.
So the teaching is still solid, and you can still take that teaching and use it.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is when you get to somebody whom has a false teaching included, right? So I know you said you eat the meat from the fish and spit out the bones, but the problem is if you look at like Joel Osteen book, I would rather tell somebody don't even touch it.
Yeah, so I guess I was more talking about the teacher and their teachings in general, the whole. So like Mark Driscoll, one book cover to cover is theologically sound. That's the meat. Right. But then he's got another book that has some false teaching in it. That's the bones. Don't even worry about that. So I guess I would say I kind of agree with you on that. So
all right.
And that's just it. And this is something that we've talked about episode, I don't know, like 5 or 6 with the music conversation with Soche. There's certain songs that our church just doesn't do. And now sometimes we don't do songs because they're they're not good. Like not even theologically, they're just not good songs. Like the
quality,
the rhythm and the cadence and the stuff. Like, man, we used to do some hymns back when I was at an independent fundamental church where one Sunday was really great because you knew all of them and there's all the different parts, and then the next week we're like, no one knows this stuff, and why did anyone write this? Because it's not singable. It's just not good. But there's certain songs that our church has chosen not to sing, and there's nothing wrong with the songs, but it's more the fact of, okay, well, who wrote that and where did it come out of? And are there still songs that speak the same truth? And do we need to take those? Do we have to have this specific song from this specific group, or are there other songs out there from more theologically sound groups, and we can unashamedly teach our church, follow the group, follow the music, you're going to be blessed. It's, basically it has our stamp of approval. I know that's a whole different conversation.
Actually, it's not too much of a different conversation.
Oh, okay.
Because when you look at music, right, think about it like this. If you're walking out of church, what do you remember?
The songs.
The songs, right? That's what a lot of people remember. A lot of people even sing some of the words as they're driving home from church. The thing is if you have solid teaching songs, then they're still getting solid teaching from that song also.
Right.
So when you also think about the how we pay, like churches pay for their rights to be able to sing songs.
Right, with the CCLI stuff, right.
Right. So who's getting that money? Right. And this is kind of one of my thoughts on that. Am I supporting a false teaching ministry if I'm using songs from those churches?
That's a good point.
And
it's a really good point.
Yeah. And then that money goes to that ministry that's teaching false teaching.
This is why I like listening to Rodney. We should just shut up and just let him run the show.
I like that idea a lot. So when it comes to music, I mean, it sounds like it's one of those things where just because the Christian radio station plays it doesn't mean we should. I mean, I don't even listen to Christian radio, so I don't even know always what they're playing, in all honesty. Last time I turned it on, they played Jeremy Camp stuff from 2008, and I'm like, guys, come on. There's been new stuff, and step up, K-Love. But, with music, with all those different things, this is how kids learn. I mean, this is why VeggieTales has so many songs. This is why so many kids' things are around songs. Like, even my mom had little songs for us, like, when we were going places, like, she was a teacher, so it's like we had the potty song. But then we also had Jesus Loves Me, because you remember in song and cadence. So I do think I'm just going to take over this real quick for a second. I think we're going to come back for a part 2.
Yeah.
I think we're going to come back for part 2. But I want to make sure we end this episode on something that people can take away with and then chew and process for a week. So let's land the plane with this episode specifically talking about music. And then we'll come back next week and talk about the questions of what are some of the common false teachings of the church today? Are there any false teachers in today's church? Is it okay to call them out?
What do we do if we spot a false
teacher?
How
do
we spot them? Yeah, there's still a lot of conversation left to have.
Right. So I want to end this conversation specifically around the idea of, with music, what should we do to A, protect ourselves from sound doctrine, and also just, let's be honest, enjoy music that we actually like.
So land the plane for us, Rodney.
So one of the things is, like, as a church elder, right? One of the things that we do is we have our assistant pastor is actually over the ministry team, so over the worship team. And so when people suggest songs, he will go basically proofread the song, and does this song actually have solid scriptural backing? Does it have solid doctrine being taught in it? Just to make sure that what we are putting out to our congregations is correct.
Right.
And also the other thing is you can see, we just talked about, what we pay, right? And where that money goes to. So that's another thing he has to look at. Where is this money going to? Are we supporting a ministry that's a false ministry if we use this song in our church service? Especially since we're doing live streams now. Every church out there is doing live streams now.
Yeah, right.
And so because those license numbers are put out there, they know exactly what song you are using, and they are going to make sure that ministry gets that money.
Yeah.
So I would suggest that the ministry teams at churches really take a hard look at the music that we're singing. So
no more reckless love, because God ain't reckless.
So are there any bands that you personally love listening to that you think our listeners should check out?
Water's Edge Church Praise Team.
Just take it what it is.
I love it.
Oh,
he's like,
good.
I guarantee it's all theologically sound.
I was not ready for that. I was not ready for that answer. I was expecting
perfect.
like Vertical Worship or City of Light. No, just Water's Edge.
I'm still going to say Gaithers.
You're going to say Gaithers. Oh.
Gaithers, yeah. Go for the Gaithers. I enjoy the Gaithers, actually.
See?
Oh, I love it. Well, hey, so let's go ahead and end this episode. We'll come back for a part 2, but I don't want to just end it yet, because we always have to.
We got a couple of things.
We got a couple things we got to do before we go. But should we jump into our fun facts with Fuller?
Let's jump into it.
Let's do it.
Wait. First thing is the coffee I'm drinking.
We forgot to ask.
Oh my goodness.
The coffee I'm drinking is Column 15 from Richmond, Virginia. So
I've never heard of that.
Always go locally sourced or locally roasted coffee. It's always the best coffee.
It's true.
I agree.
Zen Cafe from here in South Bend's phenomenal.
That's just
South
because
Bend chocolate.
Well, a lot of it we drink is my roast.
That's
so.
true.
There you go.
That is legitimate single origin,
I'm waiting for
single
my bag,
roaster.
by the way. That's
I know. We need to send you some. I have some roasted. We'll send them some.
Oh, you do have some roasted.
I have
we'll
some
have to
roasted
do
right
it. Oh, I'm Rodney. I'm sorry. We were hating on Coke.
Man, yeah, it was so nasty.
We were just hating on
he
the
finished
Coke.
it.
I finished it because I needed to drink some because I'm sweating because it's like 90 degrees in this church.
It is, but that's all right.
Oh goodness, let's get some fun facts,
All
my
right,
dude.
let's hear it, man.
Time for Fun Facts with Fuller.
I love that laugh every time, man.
Time gets
My
me.
dude, what do you got for me?
All right, Rodney, listeners, and Mark. Did
I'm
you
ready.
know
I'm ready.
in the 16th century, Turkish women could initiate a divorce if their husband didn't provide enough coffee?
Shut up.
Today, this would be unheard of, but coffee was an integral part of Turkish society back then. It was introduced in the country in the 15th century, and by the 16th century, they had mastered the art of coffee. Coffee became so popular, it seems that it became grounds for divorce.
Wow.
So that's the fun fact of the day.
My
Actually, I
goodness.
can add to that.
All right, let's hear it.
I'm going to stop the music just in
I've
case.
been to Marmaris, Turkey.
Oh, really?
So here's
Is
an
it good?
interesting concept of that. Did you know that before a man and woman are married in Turkey, the first thing she does for him is make him coffee.
And it has to be
make
good.
sure that she can do it correctly.
Wow.
Hey, Beth, do you hear that?
Janelle makes good coffee, so I'm not going to say anything.
No, I make the coffee every morning. Between all the different things, my V60, my
it's too late.
Chemex, my AeroPress.
The ink is already dried on the paper, man. You should have had her do that beforehand.
But it's funny, like she won't even make it in the morning anymore. She's like, it just doesn't taste good. I know you love making coffee. It's your love language. I'm like, shut up, you're right. I'm going to go make some now.
Grab the V60 and let's go.
It depends on the day. Like today was AeroPress Americanos.
Chemex tomorrow?
Yeah.
He's like, yeah.
Yeah,
maybe.
she washed it, so we're good. I'm going to start the music again. Oh, goodness, guys. I know I'm trying to rush to get to the end of this episode because Fuller's got to bounce really soon in this next episode, but that's next week, so you guys don't even know about that.
Before we bounce, let's plug in our sponsor,
We got to talk
Lifeway.
about CSB and Lifeway. So you're holding the Ancient Faith Study Bible right now.
I am, right there with the tan leather. That's a new addition to my book collection.
I love it. I have the hardback edition of that one.
You do, and that's
It was
why
way
I kind of got
cheaper.
it. So I like it because it's got a lot of what the early church fathers have to say, all the way up through I believe the 6th century or the 5th century.
Something like that.
Something like that. But anyways, Lifeway brought you this podcast today with Rodney Buse. And go check them out at csbible.com.
And if you're looking for a premium Bible, they have a new one that they're actually dropping right now. The CSB single column wide margin Bible. Holman handcrafted collection premium black goatskin. That's a lot of words. It's really it's expensive, but it's pretty. But you can pre-order right now for 40% off, which is really, really dope. You don't even need an RTC code. You don't even need to put anything special.
Just Lifeways.
Just Lifeway loves getting the Bible out to people. The CSB Bible. csbible.com is where you can get all that information. But guys, we are so thankful you joined us for another edition of RTC with our friend Rodney Buse, out of the What Does the Bible Say? We're going to be back next week with part 2 of this conversation, so don't go anywhere. But hey, until next time, guys,
take it easy.